Welcome, everyone, to the Victory Podcast, where we discuss the Bible, Jesus Christ, and how they both relate to our everyday life. I hope you enjoy.
Chapter 11, verse number 45 this morning. Then many of the Jews which came to Mary had seen the things which Jesus did and believed on him. What did they believe on? Just in case you weren't here last week, Lazarus was raised from the dead. A man was in the tomb for 4 days, and Jesus raised him from the dead. That's pretty miraculous, and everybody that was against Jesus said, well, at this point, after 7 miracles, he just raised a guy from the dead, and he did it in public. He did it where everybody could see it, eyewitness, historical, factual account, that he's God, and we've got to do something about this. And look at verse 45. Some believed in him, verse 46, but some of them went their way to the Pharisees. You know, you always got those people, don't you? And told them what things Jesus had done. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees, a council, and said, what do we do? For this man doeth many miracles. They finally said, we got nothing. He's performed all of these miracles. There's no denying who he is. What are we going to do about it? And look what they say, verse 40. If we let him alone, all men will believe on him, and the Romans shall come and take away both our place and nation. And one of them named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and the whole nation perish not. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus should die for that nation. And not for that nation only, but that all he should gather together in one, the children of God that were scattered abroad. Then from that day forth they took counsel together for to put him to death. And Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went thenceforth into a country near to the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there continued with his disciples. And the Jews, Passover was nigh at hand, and many went out of the country up into Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. And then sought they for Jesus, and spake among themselves. They stood in the temple. What think ye, that he will not come to the feast? Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a commandment, that if any man knew where he were, he should show it, and they might take him. Title of the message this morning is Decision Time. You know, in life, you got to make decisions. You can't just float through life. Well, I guess I'll go to school today. Well, I guess I'll get a job one day. Well, I guess I'll prepare for a game this week. No, it's about making decisions. And in this particular instance, it's decision time for the Pharisees, and it's decision time for all of us as well in life. You know that? At some point, you got to decide who you're going to marry, where you're going to live. You got to decide about future things in your life. But one key element is you got to decide whether you're going to live for Jesus Christ or not. That's a big decision, and you actually have to make it. You can't just float through life and think, well, I know about Jesus. You can know about a great job, but if you never apply for it, you'll never get it. You can know about a great lady, but you never ask her to marry you, you never will. And if you can know about Jesus but never accept him and live for him, you'll never experience the goodness that he can give you in your life. And that's where we're at in John chapter 11. It's basically the split of the book. For 3 years, Jesus has went around, and I challenge you to go back and read the first 11 chapters of John, because he's went around for 3 years to show who he is. He wants you to know who he is. Jesus is God. He doesn't want it to be complicated. It's not some majestic, mystical thing that you got to sit down and try to get the Spirit and just put some kind of blind faith into him. He clearly showed himself who he was. He told everybody who he was. He said, I came from heaven. You've never been there. I came down. I'm here performing miracle after miracle in public in front of thousands of eyewitness accounts, which we're reading about one here. John talked with Jesus, and he says, I'm showing you proof. I've healed a blind man. Who else can do that? Nobody but God. I've taken a man that couldn't walk and allowed him to walk. Who can do that? Nobody but God. I took a Lunchable, you know those little things you buy for your kids, and I fed 5,000 men, 20,000 people. Who can do that? Nobody but God. I've done all these miraculous things to get to the point to show you that I am God. You got to understand that, right? Jesus Christ, who you hear about, is God, and he came to earth for you and for me. He didn't have to. We're just dust out of the ground. But yet he come down, and out of just dust, he says, I want to have a relationship with you. I want to continue for eternity with you. But you know what? Sin caused a problem. It broke our fellowship. You shouldn't fight with me. You're separated from me. You're going to die and be separated for all of eternity and never see my goodness. When you die, you're ceasing to exist in my eyes. You're in a place that's called hell that you don't want to go to. And so I came down and I did all of this so you know who I am. And I'm going to make it clear on what you need to do so when you die, you can have joy, peace, and hope for the rest of your life. And yet, the first group of people we see here, after Jesus did all these miracles, believed on him. That means they believed that he was God and he had came for them. But you got the Pharisees. Look what they do in verse 47. Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees a council and said, what do we, for this man doeth many miracles? They couldn't deny it. Cracker Barrel has these little kids menus, and there's a steakhouse in Roanoke that has them where you have to find all these little different, one of them's owls, one of them's lanterns. You know where you got to find them? They hide them. You know what I'm talking about? Does anybody else do that? I love that. They say, you want a kids menu? Yes. How old's your kids? Doesn't matter. Give us a menu. You got to have something to kill your time. And we was eating at a steakhouse, and it was finding these little owls, and I found them all but one, and it was bothering me. It really was. I could not find that last owl. Now, if it's a kid's menu, an adult should be able to find it. And I couldn't find it. My kids were going to get embarrassed because I said, I'm asking the waitress, this is ridiculous that you can't find the owl, and I'm an adult here. And so she came over and said, ma'am, I got a problem. What is it, sir? Your food not cooked right? Your sweet tea wrong? No, everything's good, but I can't find an owl, and you said that there was this many owls. She looked at it and she said, wow, well, that's pretty interesting. We've never had that question before. And so she took it back to the kitchen, and she came back a little bit later and she said, here's the problem. We found it. And I said, I don't see it. And she said, you got to hold it up to the light because it's dark in here and you can't see it unless you hold it to the light. And I held it up to the light and I said, there it is. I said, yes. So can I tell myself that I couldn't find it, was impossible, just so I feel better, that you didn't find it for me, that you have to hold it to light. And so anyhow, we found that last piece. You know what? That's what God's done through the Bible for you and for me. He's given us a line and a dot to find all of the points in life that's very simple. And you have to hold it up to the light. Jesus is the light. Everything makes sense when you understand who Jesus is, why he came, what he's going to do for you, how you're going to live with him for all of eternity. And you got to connect the dots through the Bible. Why are you here? Why is there sin in the world? What corrects sin? What's going to happen when you take your last breath? The Bible tells you all of that. And Jesus Christ very clearly has done that. And some believed in him, but these Pharisees said, you know what? What are we going to do with this guy? Because if he continues, look at verse 48. If we let thus alone, if we don't do anything about this, all men will believe on him. And the Romans shall come and take away both our place and our nation. Boy, I tell you, that's a big decision, because when you decide to accept Jesus, they said, if we let this go on and we don't do something about him, everybody's going to believe into him, because it's very simple. And this is what's going to happen. We're going to lose our position. We've got power. We've got people that we can control. We're able to go to the temple. We're eating good. And if this gets out, we're going to lose our position. And not only that, the Romans could find out about this, and they're going to say, this is crazy. You guys are on the hook. We could even lose our life if we choose to allow this to happen. You know, in life, the devil's biggest ploy for you is that you got to give up something in your life to serve Jesus Christ. That, man, this life is so good, and I have to give up something to serve Jesus. And we don't think that life is but a vapor. You know, especially when you're young, you think nothing's going to happen to you. I can tell you, as you get older, those trees I used to climb, I climbed up a climber deer hunting this week, and I had to cut a limb just to keep going. I thought, this is crazy. I'm getting too old for this. I could fall out of the tree. As you get older, you realize life's but a vapor. But when you're young, you don't think about dying. You don't think about the end of the life. But hey, life ends. And everything you work for, you get that job, you make all that money, you get all those awards, and everything's great. Guess what? Somebody else gets it. And normally it ends up at a yard sale, like at the fall festival, when somebody buys it for $1. Do you know what? Jesus Christ, everything you do for him never ends. Everything that you put in, I love that. As you're a coach, you say, if you put in the work starting this week, the thing with Deion Sanders, defensive coordinator that coached him, he said, the game is the easy part. The game is the easy part. The hard part is the practice from Monday to the game that you got to be disciplined. You know, this life is about discipline and realizing what Jesus offers and realizing that you're not going to give up everything for Him. Although the devil's going to tell you that, you're going to gain everything for eternity if you'll just live for Him. The Pharisees didn't see that. They said, listen, we can't give up our place for Jesus. And so verse 49, they go to the high priest there. Look at it. One of them named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, then the whole nation perish not." He didn't realize that, but he was prophesying what was really going to happen. But in his mind, he said this, "Guys, listen, be quiet." That's what he's saying, not you guys. So y'all got a little nervous, didn't you? He said, "Guys, listen." Now, this would be like the president calling a special meeting with Congress, and Congress, Democrat and Republican, agreeing, and the president agreeing, and 100% vote. This would be almost impossible, isn't it? They didn't like each other back then, just like today. Democrat and Republican, they don't like each other. You know, the devil could run in the other party, and they'd say, you know what? If they run in their party, they'd say, let's vote for him. That's just because they didn't like each other, just like today, they did not like each other. But when it came to Jesus, Caiaphas, this great high priest, said, listen, guys, it's simple. This is what we need to do. To keep our place, to keep everything the way it needs to be, we need to kill just one man. Just kill Jesus. And then everybody else will be able to live like they are. We'll be able to keep our place. We'll be able to keep our prominent positions. What he didn't realize is he was prophesying because Jesus would be the man that would die for the whole world. You understand that Jesus substituted into the game for you? That you are on your way to destruction, and when you die because you have judgment to face, because you've sinned against a holy God, for all have sinned. But God didn't want that to happen, so He called a time out, and He substituted into the game of life, and He grabbed me and you, and He took us over here and set us down, and He went over to this place, and He took the wrath of sin, and He really died so that you didn't have to. That's what Jesus Christ did. He substituted in your place and died for you. And then over here, He's given you His righteousness. He's given you His perfection so that in heaven, the Father sees you as perfect. And Caiaphas didn't realize it, but that's what he was telling the people. And they got together and they said, you know what? We're not giving up our prestige. We're not giving up all that we have. We're going to make a decision to kill Jesus. Look at it in verse 53. What a sad day. The religious leaders, be careful about religion. You know, this church won't save you. I don't have any special ways to save you. It's all about Jesus Christ. And the religion, these are religious people that have gotten so corrupt that they said, you know what we got to do to keep our position in life? Verse 53, from this day forward, they took counsel together to put Him to death, to put Jesus to death. We can't give up our comfortability. We can't give up our position. We're going to have to get together and make a unanimous decision. The vote is unanimous. Democrat, Republican, President, get rid of Jesus. That's the only way we can go forth. And you know, Jesus had made His decision just like He's made it for us. For 3 years, He went around and told everybody who He was. So clear. If you study the Bible, you'll understand who Jesus was. Historical, factual. No other religion has that, by the way. You study it, take the Bible, take history, study to realize what Jesus did, who He was, and then they looked at Him, they understood it, and they said, I'm not going to accept it. And you and I have to make that decision at one point in your life, whether you're going to accept Jesus and whether you're going to live for Him. The Pharisees, their decision time came, and they said, we're not accepting Him, we're going to kill Him. And that day forth, verse 54, they took counsel to kill Him. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went therefore into a country near the wilderness. I like that. Even Jesus was an outdoor man, went out toward the wilderness. Why? Because He had a timetable that He was going to fulfill. No one was going to take His life. He was going to lay His life down for you and for me. In verse 55, look at it. Don't miss this. And the Jews' Passover was at hand. So here we have it. Jesus has, for 11 chapters, shown you who He is. His public ministry's over. He's not going to go around and say who I am. He's now in the wilderness preparing for the battle of His life, the cross. He's God, but He feels pain as a man. He's the God-man. It had to be a man to die that was sinless and perfect, but it had to be God as well, and that's what happened for you and for me to live. And so He goes to the wilderness. He's prepping for the week, the most terrible week when He'll die, a crucified death, a martyr's death for you and for me, and He's at that point. And the key here it says is, look at it, and the Jews' Passover was at hand. That's very important to understand. God makes things so clear. Passover. If you study the Jews, they still practice it. The Passover, they had practiced this for hundreds of years. What is the Passover? You can study this of a miracle that happened that they celebrated for years and years. God took his people, Jewish people, by the way, in Israel, that's God's people. He took them, they were in Egypt, and he said, I'm going to allow you to get out of Egypt, and Pharaoh won't let you out. So tonight you're getting out. But this is what's going to happen. You got to listen to me. Gotcha, didn't it? It's talking about them. You got to listen to me. The death angel is coming. The death angel is coming. That's what God tells us today. Death is coming. I've seen a lot of people die. I've been at the deathbed of a lot of people, and I understand this more than anybody. The death angel's coming. But here's how you can live. There's a door like this. This is what Passover is. You read in the book of Exodus. If you take blood from a lamb, yep, they had to kill an innocent, spotless, perfect little lamb. It was probably the pet of a kid, and this is the price of our sin. You had to kill that lamb and take that blood and wipe it on the door and then wipe it on the post. What? What are you talking about? This is God speaking in the book of Exodus. Wipe the blood on the door. Here's what's going to happen. Tonight, the death angel is coming through that door. If there's blood on the door, he's coming in with a vengeance. He's coming in like this. And if he sees that blood, he's stopping, and judgment will pass over your house. There will be no judgment. But if you do not listen to what I'm telling you, if you do not put blood on the door, the death angel's coming in full throttle. He's going to kill the firstborn in that house. That's what the Bible says in the book of Exodus. Why is he doing that? Because Pharaoh hardened his heart and said, I'm letting the people go. And God said, okay, this is the last judgment. If you don't do it, you will die. Pharaoh said, this is ridiculous. And whoever did not apply the blood died that night, the firstborn. Do you know when you take your last breath, the only thing that's going to matter, not how good or bad you were, not if you lived a great life, a bad life. The thing that's going to matter for eternity is that you've realized you have to apply the blood to your life. That's Jesus Christ on the cross. You believe it. You believe it. The proof is here for you to study if you don't believe it. So you do believe. And then once you believe it, it's decision time where you say, I'm all in for Jesus Christ. That's when you say, Lord, I do believe. Everybody in the Bible that got saved made a public decision for Christ as I read it, one form or fashion. So you're not ashamed to say, I'm a sinner. Jesus was not. He really did die for me. I want His salvation because I don't want to die and spend eternity separated from a holy God in a place where there is no God, when it's mass chaos forever because the soul lives forever. So I'm going to accept Him as my Lord and Savior. That was the decision at Passover, and it's a decision for you and I today. And so the Passover was a key time. They knew that a lamb would be killed and the blood applied, and they celebrated that every year that God saved them for that. Well, guess what? Passover week's coming up in this passage. Guess who is going to die the night they sacrifice the lambs coming up? Jesus dies because He is that picture. He did that for hundreds of years so they would understand we got to sacrifice a lamb. The blood's the only way. Got to sacrifice a lamb. The blood, hundreds and hundreds of years. And all of a sudden, hey, it's Passover night. What? Jesus is dying and the blood's being shed on the doorpost, which is the cross. And because of that, I can live. That was the whole point Christ made. So it's Passover. That's important. Verse 57. Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a command that if any man knew where he were, he should show it that he might take him. They intimidated people. You know, intimidate. You ever been intimidated? But they tried to intimidate everybody and said, listen, we're looking for Jesus. If you find Him, you better turn Him in or you're in bad shape. So the first group, decision time, they said, I'm not going to accept the truth. I'm going to reject the truth. And when you reject it, you know what happens? You draw farther away. When you reject Jesus, all of a sudden you start getting way away from Him. You start having crazy stuff happen. Why? Because when you go away from the truth, anything goes. That's why in our country it's insane what's happening. Because if you don't accept the truth, you can accept anything else, and that's what the Pharisees had did. But there's another group. Look at verse 1 of chapter 12 here. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover came to Bethany. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom He raised from the dead. There they made Him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with Him. This is just exciting. Just focus for a second of this back in time. Pharisees are looking to kill Jesus. They're worried to death. They're on pins and needles. They're going to lose their position. They're so focused on their problem, they can't even enjoy life. And here is this, they're having it at a leper. You read this in Matthew and Luke. They're at a house of a leper. You couldn't be around a leper back then, so Jesus obviously had to have healed him. Here's Lazarus, a dead man. I'd love to have been there. He was dead, and now he's sitting there eating with Jesus in a house. They're having a feast, and they're enjoying life. Do you know that you can enjoy life right now, even though the future calls for death, because there's an eternal life, there's an everlasting life, and you will actually be, this is foreshadowing of what you and I will be doing in the future if you read through the whole Bible, that although there was chaos happening and Jesus was getting ready to die for the sins of the world and everybody wanted to try to kill him, here he is, kicked back, having a feast. Lazarus, who was dead, is now alive. There's a leper who had a lot of problems, is now healed, and they're having a good time. You know, you can still have joy, peace. You can have a great marriage right now. You have a great relationship right now. You can have a great family right now. You can have a great quality of life right now if you'll just realize what your future holds and live by that and not look right in front of you of your problems today. And that's what these people did. Boy, I love that it's a future of what's going to happen. You know, we're going to sit and feast with Jesus. You know, there was food before the curse. I'm thankful for that. We don't need to eat in heaven to keep our bodies, but we're going to have a marriage supper of the Lamb. The future's bright with Jesus. There's good times ahead. These people foreshadow that we're going to be in a relationship with Jesus. We're going to be in His presence. There's going to be good times. There's going to be no worries of outside what's going on because He's going to protect us. It's His timetable, and it never ends. It's for eternity. Don't miss it, and always keep that in mind. You're going to live for eternity somewhere, and the decision you make, whether it's like the Pharisees in total eternity worried, separated from Jesus, or total eternity with Him, I'm having the marriage supper of the Lamb, never to end. I love that. I love Jesus tells us that very clearly. John 14:3, where I am, there ye may be also. You believe Jesus or not? He says that. He also says, has raised up together and made us sit together in heavenly places. How about Philippians 3:21? I love this one. With all the vertebrae mind that got smashed by Dennis Haley. Who shall change our vile body that it may be fashioned like unto His glorious body. You're going to get a new body. Are you thankful for that? According to the working whereby He is able. You know, God's able to do anything. He's able. He's in control of all things, and whatever problems you're going through, He is able to subdue all things unto Him. How about this? And the glory which Thou gavest me, Jesus here, I have given them. I'm thankful for Jesus. I hope you are. Without Him, I have nothing. Without Him, I wouldn't be standing up here this morning. Without Him, I have no future hope. Without Him and His death on the cross, I have nothing to look forward to. But because of what He did, I have everything to look forward to. And the future is bright when you have Jesus Christ. But as we've seen the two decisions, one, accepting Jesus and the joy that it brings. The other decision of total chaos, trying to kill the Savior and what it brings when you don't accept the truth. The last point I want you to understand in the first whole book of the first 11 chapters of John is this. Jesus doesn't want you to miss a key ingredient in life. As you look back through all of these miracles, as you read through, I want you to pick up one thing. He fed the 5,000. Who did He use? He used the disciples to hand out the food. He healed the lame man, but He told him, you got to get up, throw your stick away, and you have to actually walk. He told the blind man, I'm healing you, but you have to get up and go down in the water and wash, clean your eyes. And He raised Lazarus from the dead, but He said a key element before He did it, and He said, hey, you guys go remove the stone before he comes out of the grave. God uses us to do the possible. Don't miss this. And you have to let Him do the impossible. You understand? It's impossible for you to live past this life. It's not going to happen. It's a lot of times impossible for you to get through your problem. It's so many things going on in your life. There's no way you're going to get through. It's an impossible situation. But you know what God does? He calls us to do the possible, whether it's health, family, financial struggles, relationships, kids. It doesn't matter what it is. He tells us you have to do the possible. There's possible things in your life that you can do that will allow me to do the impossible things. What is it that is keeping you either from believing? What is it keeping you in your financial trouble, your family trouble, from just getting back up and saying, I'm going to move forward? Life is not over. You've got breath right now. You've got the ability to move forward, and God may only give you one extra day. God may give you an extra 50 years. It doesn't matter. You have to get up and move forward because why? God will do the impossible. Leave that to Him. But you do have to do the possible. There's a lot of possible things in life you have to do to succeed and let God work all of the impossible things out for you to move forward. don't forget that that's what Jesus Christ has done for you and for me. Sometimes problems are so big you don't even know where to start. Guess what? Do the next thing. There's a sign back there. Take the next step. Just take a step. You don't need to conquer the world. You know what about Lazarus that's amazing? Pretty sure about this. I don't see a word quoted anywhere that Lazarus said, yet he's impacting us today. Millions and millions and millions of people by his life, because he was a dead man and he came alive. And you know what? If you've been dead and come alive by Jesus Christ, you're just a walking testimony. And don't try to overcomplicate things. Just the way that you live will allow other people to see that, and you'll be a testimony to other people. And you know what? You just worry about taking that next step, because God asked us to do the possible. I love David and Goliath's story. It's a great story. We tell the kids about it. But you know what? David had to do the possible. God needed somebody that would just step up and allow him to do the impossible and defeat the giant. Jesus removed the stone. He removed the coverings by simply using someone else. Whatever your situation is, take the next step. Do the possible. And then lastly, if you're here, you've never accepted Jesus Christ, don't miss that feast. Chapter 12 we looked at. Hey, heaven's a real place. When you die, your soul will be with the Lord forever. He's very clearly showed us what the future holds for those that know him. He's very clearly showed us that he has to have judgment. Very clearly that the wages of your sin is death. That means you're separated from God forever. Right now you have every point of access to make a decision for him, to live your life for him. You choose that. Teenagers, you're just looking forward to that day when you can actually have the ability to make your own choices, so people aren't making them for you. But you know what? Right now, every single person internally has a decision to make. Whether I'm going to take the next step in life, whether it's moving forward from an impossible situation and me just doing the next possible thing and God getting me through it, or it's just believing in the Lord Jesus Christ. You owe God for your sin. You owe him. When you die, you owe God. Just like you owe your mortgage payment, just like you owe on your car maybe, you owe a debt. And when you die, God says you got to pay that debt of sin for all of eternity. Your soul lives forever. God created every person in the very beginning for eternity. You have an eternal soul. So God says, I'm going to have a perfect place. Everybody thinks, man, God's harsh. God says, you messed up. He didn't. God didn't mess up. We did. Your representative Adam messed up for you. And because of that, you're going to pay for sin by being separated from this perfect place called heaven for eternity. But Jesus said, hey, I got a plan. I'm coming from heaven. I got a message. I got a message and a plan. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to die on the cross. The Father in heaven is going to accept that payment. It's going to be gruesome. It's going to be painful, because a holy God requires a holy, perfect sacrifice, and I'm the only one that can do it, but I'm going to do it for you. And he let people touch him, and he let people see him, and he had eyewitness accounts, and he did everything. So if you read the Bible, you say, wow, every atheist that you can read about that's just studied the Bible have turned and said, wow, look at this, what God did, what Jesus Christ has given me. He substituted into my place, and he took my payment. And for you, what does he require? That you accept him. Confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus. Believe in thy heart that God has raised him from the dead. And what does it say? Thou shalt be saved. Realize I got a major sin problem. Realize that Jesus Christ came and conquered that sin problem. Realize that all I have to do as a gift is accept that gift card, is accept Jesus Christ. And that's hard to do, because the Pharisees couldn't do it, even though they knew. They couldn't accept it because they thought, man, I'm having to give up so much. This morning, if you've never accepted Christ, can I tell you, today's the day of salvation. Christ has given up everything for you to live with him for eternity, but he gives you the choice to make a decision for him, and you got to make the decision.
If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm Pastor Brandon Nicely at Victory Baptist Church. Find us at victorybaptistcf.org or on Facebook at Victory Baptist CF. God bless.